You ever notice how people cheer for you until you start growing past them? They loved you when you were stuck, when you were predictable, when your life made them feel comfortable. But the moment you start healing, leveling up, changing your standards, suddenly you're different. They say you've changed like it's an insult. But what they really mean is you stopped staying small so they could feel big. People don't actually hate your growth. They hate the reflection it forces them to see in themselves. Because when you start rising, they have to face why they're still standing still. People hate when you set boundaries they can no longer cross because boundaries reveal truth. They show who respects you and who only benefits from you. When you start drawing lines around your peace, your time, your energy, people who once had unlimited access to you suddenly feel restricted. And that restriction exposes their real intentions. They never cared about your comfort. They cared about their convenience. The moment you start saying, I can't make it tonight, I don't like that tone, or please don't talk to me that way, you're no longer easy to manipulate. You're no longer the version of you that kept quiet just to keep the peace. And that shift makes people uncomfortable because the version of you that allowed disrespect was easier for them to deal with than the version of you that demands respect. Setting boundaries forces people to confront the parts of themselves that take advantage of others. It holds up a mirror. Suddenly, they can't use you as their emotional punching bag, their problem solver, their backup plan. You stop absorbing their moods, fixing their mistakes, explaining yourself endlessly just to be understood. And they hate that, not because you're wrong, but because you've changed the rules of the relationship. You've gone from being available to being aware, from being accommodating to being accountable to yourself. And the moment you start protecting your space, you start seeing who really valued you versus who only valued what you provided. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with locks. They don't shut people out, they teach people how to enter. But to the ones who thrived on your lack of boundaries, it feels like rejection. They'll say you're distant, cold, selfish. They'll make you second guess your right to peace. Because for so long, your open access was their comfort zone. You saying no feels like betrayal to someone who was used to your yes. But here's what they don't understand. Your no is not against them. It's for you. It's you finally saying, I matter too. And when you start mattering to yourself, you stop being manipulated by guilt. The hardest part of setting boundaries isn't saying them. It's keeping them when people push back. Because they will. They'll test your patience, your kindness, your consistency. They'll remind you of the old you, the one who always compromised, who always made excuses. They'll call you difficult when all you're doing is being different. But every time you hold the line, you teach people how to treat you. You teach them that your energy is not free, your presence is not a given, and your time is not an unlimited resource. You begin to reprogram your relationships. Boundaries are like emotional fences. They define where you end and others begin. Without them, people blur those lines and you end up carrying emotions that don't belong to you. Anger, guilt, pressure. And then you wonder why you're drained all the time. Because people take as much as you allow. You train them through your silence, through your availability, through your tolerance. So when you start saying, that doesn't work for me, it's a shock. But it's not your job to manage their reaction. It's your job to manage your peace. People who truly love and respect you won't hate your boundaries. They'll adjust to them. They'll understand that your self-respect doesn't threaten them. It strengthens the relationship. But people who were only around for what they could take will disappear. That's why boundaries don't just protect you. They reveal your circle. You start realizing who's meant to grow with you and who was only there for the version of you that never said no. Setting boundaries is also about unlearning. You've been conditioned to equate self-sacrifice with love, to believe that saying yes makes you kind and saying no makes you mean. You've been praised for being dependable, even when it cost you your peace. So when you start drawing lines, guilt shows up like an old friend. It whispers, you're letting people down. But you're not letting people down. You're letting go of the version of yourself that kept everyone else up while you were falling apart. Boundaries are uncomfortable because they challenge patterns, both yours and theirs. If you grew up being the fixer, the people pleaser, the peacekeeper, setting boundaries will feel unnatural. You'll worry about losing people, upsetting people, disappointing people. But that discomfort is part of growth. It's the cost of choosing yourself. And every time you choose yourself, you build self-trust. You start believing that your feelings are valid, that your time has value, that your no doesn't require an explanation. The people who get angry when you set boundaries are the ones who benefited most from you not having any. Think about that. The louder their reaction, the clearer the message. Healthy people don't get mad at your boundaries, they get clarity from them. Unhealthy people see boundaries as a threat to their control. They'll twist your decisions, guilt, trip you, bring up the past to make you doubt yourself. They'll accuse you of being selfish when in reality, you're finally being self-aware. The truth is, boundaries don't ruin relationships. They reveal the ones that were already one-sided. You'll notice how peaceful life becomes when you stop over-explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. When you stop trying to be liked and start trying to be respected. When you stop pouring from an empty cup just to keep others full. That peace you feel after saying no to something that drains you. That's your boundary doing its job. That's self-respect disguised as silence. When you set boundaries, you don't lose people who love you. You lose people who were using you. You stop being the person who carries everyone else's emotional baggage. You stop being the solution to problems you didn't cause. You start protecting your time like it's sacred, because it is. You start realizing that your worth doesn't come from being available, it comes from being authentic. And authenticity requires boundaries. You'll notice your circle getting smaller, but tighter. You'll start attracting people who speak your language. People who don't take offense when you need space. Who respect your time without you having to explain why. You'll feel lighter, freer, more grounded. Because for the first time, you're not managing other people's emotions. You're managing your own energy. And that shift changes everything. People hate when you set boundaries because it forces them to either grow or go. It demands accountability. It takes away the comfort of taking advantage. But boundaries are not about punishment. They're about protection. They protect your peace, your priorities, your purpose. And when people realize they can't walk all over you anymore, they'll either learn to walk with you or walk away. People hate when you stop seeking their approval because your validation used to be their control. When you cared what they thought, they had influence over your choices, your identity, your direction. The moment you stop needing their approval, you remove their power to define your worth. And that's when people start to feel uneasy, because the version of you that constantly asked, "Is this okay?" or "Do you think I should?" was predictable, manageable, easy to influence. But the version of you that moves with self-trust, that version scares them. When you stop seeking approval, you stop performing. You stop shrinking yourself to fit in places you've outgrown. You stop trying to sound right, look right, act right just to keep everyone else comfortable. You start realizing that no amount of approval from others can fill the emptiness that comes from betraying yourself. And once you get that, really get that, you become untouchable in the best way. You no longer measure your worth by someone else's reaction. You no longer chase validation like oxygen. You start breathing on your own. Approval seeking often begins early. Maybe you grew up needing to please people to feel safe, to earn love, to avoid rejection. You learned that peace only came when everyone around you was happy with you. So you became adaptable, agreeable, the peacemaker, the one who never wanted to disappoint. But that pattern becomes a cage. Because the more you seek approval, the less you recognize yourself. You start shaping your personality around other people's expectations. You start saying yes to things that drain you, smiling when you're not okay, apologizing for things that aren't your fault. And when you finally decide to stop doing that, when you decide to live on your own terms, people who were used to that version of you feel threatened. People hate when you stop seeking their approval because your independence exposes their dependency. They need you to need them. They need to feel important, powerful, superior. When you no longer seek their validation, it highlights their own insecurity because now they have to sit with themselves instead of using your admiration as their mirror. You stop feeding their ego, and suddenly they start calling you prideful, arrogant, distant. But in reality, you've just stopped living for their applause. The shift from approval, seeking to self-acceptance is quiet but radical. You start asking yourself questions like, do I actually want this? Does this feel right to me? Am I doing this because it aligns with my values or because I'm afraid of judgment? You begin filtering decisions through your own peace instead of people's opinions. And once you do that, you realize how many of your past choices were made from fear. Fear of disapproval, fear of rejection, fear of standing out. But freedom starts where approval ends. Because you can't live freely while constantly editing yourself for an audience. When you stop seeking approval, you'll notice the silence. People who once praised you for being so easy to get along with will pull back when you start having opinions. People who used to admire your humility will feel uneasy when you start setting boundaries. They'll interpret your confidence as arrogance, your peace as distance, your growth as rebellion. Because to them, your independence is unfamiliar. It reminds them of their own lack of courage to live truthfully. Approval seeking is also a form of control disguised as love. When people say, I just want what's best for you, they often mean, I want you to do what makes me comfortable. When you stop playing by that script, it disrupts the dynamic. You stop saying yes to things that don't align with your purpose, and that makes them uncomfortable because your compliance made life easier for them. But you can't keep sacrificing your authenticity for someone else's comfort. The truth is, approval doesn't equal love. It equals acceptance under conditions. And conditional acceptance will always keep you performing. Once you break free from that, you start experiencing real love, the kind that doesn't require you to change to be worthy of it. You start finding people who see you as you are, not as they need you to be. That's when life starts feeling lighter, relationships become deeper, and your choices begin to align with who you actually are instead of who you're pretending to be. When you stop seeking approval, you gain peace. You no longer spend hours replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you said the wrong thing. You stop trying to read between the lines of every text, searching for hidden disapproval. You stop chasing validation that never lasts longer than a few seconds. You start living for something bigger: truth, purpose, freedom. You start trusting your instincts again, the same instincts you used to silence to fit in. And yes, it's uncomfortable, because letting go of approval means facing the possibility of being misunderstood, criticized, even disliked. But being disliked for being real is always better than being loved for being fake. Approval seeking traps you in the cycle of performance, while authenticity frees you from it. People might not understand the new you, but that's okay. They're not supposed to. The new you isn't living for understanding. The new you is living for peace. The moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you start reclaiming your power. You stop waiting for permission to live your life. You stop letting someone else's opinion dictate your worth. You realize that your value doesn't decrease when someone fails to see it. You learn that you don't need to prove anything to anyone because who you are is already enough. You stop chasing validation because you start giving it to yourself. You become your own source of approval, and that's when you finally become free. People hate when your peace no longer includes their chaos because your calm exposes the noise they live in. When you stop reacting, when you stop engaging in the same emotional battles, when you stop getting pulled into their drama, they lose control. Chaos needs attention to survive. It feeds on reaction, it thrives on conflict, it breathes through emotional access. So when you detach, not coldly, but consciously, it feels like starvation to people who've been living off your energy. They don't know how to exist without your response. You're fixing, you're explaining. And that's when you see it clearly. Your peace threatens people who only felt powerful when they could disturb it. When you reach that point in your life where you'd rather have quiet than constant conflict, you start moving differently. You stop chasing closure from people who don't have the capacity to give it. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You start walking away from arguments that go nowhere and conversations that drain you. You start protecting your emotional space the same way you'd protect your physical space, because you finally understand that not everything deserves your reaction. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. Because for years, your attention validated their chaos, your involvement made their dysfunction feel normal, your peace disrupts their patterns. When you don't engage, they can't play the same games. When you don't defend yourself, they can't twist your words. When you stop apologizing for things you didn't do, they can't use guilt to control you. So they'll try harder. They'll provoke you, test you, accuse you of being cold, heartless, or distant. But what they really mean is, I can't manipulate you like I used to. They don't hate your peace because it's wrong. They hate it because it makes their chaos irrelevant. Peace changes your energy. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's stable. You start showing up calm in situations that once triggered you, and people don't know how to handle that. You stop defending your decisions because you're no longer looking for agreement. You start realizing that silence is often the loudest response. You begin to value your inner state more than being right, more than winning an argument, more than keeping up appearances. And that's powerful. Because once you taste peace, you stop entertaining anything that risks it. Peace doesn't mean avoidance. It means discernment. It means you've learned the difference between fixing and fueling. You used to think that engaging meant caring, but now you understand that disengaging is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and even for them. You've realized that some people don't want solutions. They want chaos to stay relevant. They want to argue, complain, and pull you into their storms because it distracts them from having to face themselves. When you step out of that storm, they suddenly have to confront the truth that their chaos is self-created. And that's a truth many can't handle. There's a certain maturity in choosing peace over participation. You stop needing to have the last word. You stop explaining your side of the story. You stop wasting emotional energy on people who only listen to respond, not to understand. Instead, you start using that energy to build yourself. You put it into your goals, your healing, your joy. You start realizing that peace isn't found in control. It's found in letting go. Letting go of the urge to fix, to convince, to be understood. And that kind of peace can't be given. It's earned through boundaries, reflection, and self-awareness. The truth is, some people can only connect through chaos. It's their language. They don't know how to be close without conflict, how to bond without drama, how to love without control. So when you choose peace, you're speaking a language they don't understand. And instead of learning it, they reject it. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you don't care anymore. But what they're really saying is that they can't reach you on the same frequency of dysfunction they're used to. Peace makes you powerful because it means you're no longer controlled by your emotions or by anyone else's. You don't react out of impulse, you respond out of clarity. You don't take everything personally, you observe it and decide what deserves your energy. You stop fighting battles that don't matter because you finally understand that not every reaction is worth your peace. You become intentional with your words, your time, your presence. You start realizing that silence, distance, and composure are not weakness. They're strength under control. When your peace no longer includes someone's chaos, you'll lose people. You'll lose the ones who thrived on your emotional availability. You'll lose the ones who mistook your empathy for weakness. You'll lose the ones who loved you only when you were easy to manipulate. But in return, you'll gain yourself. You'll gain clarity, focus, energy. You'll wake up without the emotional hangover that comes from constant drama. You'll start noticing the beauty of quiet mornings, of stillness, of calm conversations. You'll start feeling safe in your own mind again. And that's the part people don't see. How much work it takes to build that kind of peace. It's not passive, it's powerful. It takes strength to stay calm when someone's trying to provoke you. It takes discipline to walk away from chaos when your ego wants to respond. It takes self-awareness to say, I don't need to be right, I just need to be okay. That's peace, not perfection, not pretending, but prioritizing what truly matters. When you reach that level of peace, you stop trying to change people. You realize that everyone has their own timing, their own lessons, their own storms to face. You can love them without letting them drain you. You can care without carrying their chaos. You start giving from overflow instead of emptiness. And people who don't know how to live without chaos won't understand that. They'll call your detachment selfish, but it's not, it's survival. People hate when your peace no longer includes their chaos because your stability exposes their instability. Your calm reveals their turbulence. But peace isn't about proving anything. It's about protecting everything that makes you whole. It's about choosing quiet confidence over loud reaction. It's about no longer living at the mercy of other people's emotional storms. Because when your peace stops including their chaos, that's when you finally begin to live instead of constantly surviving. People hate when your growth exposes their comfort because your evolution reminds them of everything they've avoided changing. When you start leveling up mentally, emotionally, spiritually, it forces people around you to see the parts of themselves they've kept stagnant. Your growth becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see in it. They were comfortable when you were on the same level, struggling with the same excuses, complaining about the same things. It made them feel safe, equal, unthreatened. But the moment you start improving, their comfort starts to feel like inadequacy, and instead of being inspired, they become defensive. Growth is confronting because it challenges the unspoken agreements people make in relationships. The silent contracts that say, well, stay the same. You used to gossip together, complain together, procrastinate together. Then one day, you stopped. You started reading more, healing more, choosing peace instead of drama. You started valuing time, goals, discipline. Suddenly, what once felt like friendship now feels like distance. They think you're acting different, but the truth is, you are. You've simply outgrown the version of yourself that matched their comfort zone. People hate your growth because it shines a light on their own excuses. When they see you doing the work, facing your trauma, setting boundaries, taking accountability, it dismantles their reasons for staying stuck. It removes the illusion that change is impossible. They can't say, "I can't," anymore when they're watching you prove that it's possible. So rather than confronting themselves, they project onto you. They'll say you've changed, that you think you're better, that you're leaving people behind. But you're not leaving anyone behind. You're just not waiting for people who refuse to move forward. Growth often isolates you before it elevates you. The people who once celebrated you might start resenting you. They'll minimize your progress, make jokes about your new mindset, or roll their eyes when you talk about your goals. But that resistance is a reflection of their discomfort, not your direction. You're disrupting the rhythm of their stagnation. You've gone from complaining to creating, from waiting to working, from wishing to becoming. And that shift makes people who still rely on excuses feel exposed. The truth is, people were comfortable with your pain because it matched theirs. They felt bonded through shared struggle. But when you start healing, you change the emotional dynamic. You're no longer connecting through wounds. You're connecting through growth. And that requires vulnerability, accountability, and evolution, three things comfort avoids. That's why some people disappear when you start improving. Your light reminds them of the darkness they refuse to leave. Growth changes your energy. You start moving with purpose instead of pressure. You stop chasing validation and start chasing alignment. You begin to see things differently. What used to excite you now drains you. What used to satisfy you now feels small. You no longer tolerate chaos because peace feels better, and that shift unsettles people who still thrive on drama. Your silence becomes suspicious, your focus becomes intimidating, your progress becomes proof that change is possible. And for someone who's built an identity around being stuck, your transformation feels like a threat. But growth is not about superiority, it's about responsibility. It's about choosing to evolve, even when it's uncomfortable. It's about holding yourself accountable, even when no one's watching. It's about realizing that you can't keep shrinking yourself just to make others feel secure. Because every time you do, you betray your potential, and people will try to guilt you for that. They'll say, "You've changed," as if change isn't the whole point of life. But staying the same to keep others comfortable isn't loyalty, it's self-abandonment. The more you grow, the more you'll notice how many relationships were rooted in your old patterns. You'll see who truly values you versus who only valued the version of you that benefited them. Some people loved you because you made them feel needed. Some liked you because your lack of boundaries gave them access. Some admired you only when you weren't doing better than them. Growth removes those illusions. It forces people to either rise with you or fall away. Growth also requires solitude. There's a period where you feel misunderstood, where your circle shrinks, where silence replaces noise. You start realizing that evolution demands separation. Not because you're better than others, but because your direction no longer matches theirs. And in that space, you find clarity. You start understanding that outgrowing people doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you started caring about yourself too. People hate your growth because it breaks the rhythm of familiarity. They miss the version of you that made them comfortable, the one who laughed at the same things, tolerated the same nonsense, lived small so others could feel big. But growth isn't meant to make everyone comfortable, it's meant to make you complete. It requires you to shed patterns, habits, and sometimes people. You can't grow and stay the same. You can't expand and remain in places that celebrate your limitations. The truth is, your growth won't threaten the right people. It will inspire them. The ones who are meant to stay will evolve with you. They'll celebrate your wins, not compete with them. They'll match your energy, not drain it. They'll understand that your evolution doesn't diminish them, it invites them. But the ones who resist it, they'll fade away, and that's okay. Because not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Growth exposes comfort, and comfort resists exposure. That's why your transformation triggers people. It holds up a mirror they didn't ask for. But you can't dim your light just to make others feel less shadowed. You can't apologize for doing what they're too afraid to start. Because growth isn't betrayal. It's proof that you've stopped betraying yourself. People hate your growth because it reveals their comfort for what it is, a cage they've mistaken for peace. And while they stay in it, you've chosen to step out and keep walking, even if you have to walk alone.